It's been a while since my last Resident Evil 4 challenge, and near the release of Resident Evil Requiem no less, but it's safe to say that I've been thinking hard for its next one, given the fact that it started strong without using guns, and after some pondering, I finally decided to find out, can you beat Resident Evil 4 as the Silent Minimalist? For those that don't know, there are two achievements for Resident Evil 4, with one being the Minimalist. This achievement involves you beating the game with only using knives and pistols, and the next being the Silent Stranger, an achievement I've already completed, but this achievement involves you beating the game without speaking to the merchant. So with that, the rules are set in stone like the 10 Commandments. I can only use pistols and knives, as well as not allowed to speak to the merchant, and to make things even more interesting, I'm going to try and finish the game with an S+ ranking. I of course set the game to professional because nothing better than shooting yourself in the foot just to see what happens if you pour alcohol over it. After the recent fall of Umbrella, I decided to continue my career as a mercenary. I was set on a task by an unknown client in search of a high-value target being held prisoner in Spain, and acquire a sample of Las Plagas infecting its people. I came around a small and worn-down cabin in the woods, and doing some investigation inside, I found the ID of one of the target's escorts, confirming that the target was here, and getting an unexpected attack from behind, the aggressive villager was quickly disposed of. Continuing my investigation further upstairs, I discovered the target was being held prisoner in a church by a nearby lake. However, before I can gather any more information, the villager must have heard the commotion, leaving me no choice but to fall back through the window and make my way into the village. I found the second escort of the target. Seeing the escort being burned alive, it didn't give me much hope for the target's survival. However, it didn't take long for one of them to notice me, and I had no choice but to bunker down into a house. Without the shotgun for easy crowd control, I immediately sacrificed my knife to avoid unconsented surgery by chainsaw. As well as sacrificing a peaceful cow to deal with the villagers and save even just a little bit of ammo. Eventually, a church bell rings, and that seemed to have pacified the villagers. Continuing further, I grabbed the wooden cog and pushed the wagon out of the way to expose myself to resources as well as traps ready to deal permanent health damage. Investigating the noise coming from the barricaded basement, I unexpectedly revealed another USS member, but unfortunately before I could begin to ask him how and why he is here, I was interrupted by the chief of the village that was far stronger than his subjects. I wake up chained up with the USS member from before. He introduced himself as Martinez, codenamed Ghost, and a former member of the Alpha Team, which caught me off guard, and I immediately interrogated him because I was sure all of Alpha Team except for me was wiped out. He claimed he managed to barely survive the ambush with William Birkin, as well as managed to acquire a sample of the G-virus, but while trying to escape he was ambushed again by an unidentified woman, and was knocked out once again after handing over the G-virus to her. He then said after regaining consciousness he eventually heard the fall of Umbrella and decided to become a mercenary, which then led to my next question, what he was doing here. But before he could answer, we had an unexpected guest that was quickly dealt with, who dropped the key to our chains, and Ghost used the opportunity to escape. I was forced to push through with a knife due to my gear being removed, but it didn't take long to retrieve them back. I then had to push through Dynamite Valley, which I decided the best course of action was to run past the enemies to save as much ammunition as possible. Exploring the chief manor, I found a key and a diary containing Taylor Swift lyrics. Yeah, that checks out. I tactically acquired, aka stole, the Signia key in the chief manor, but was cut off by the chief himself that didn't appreciate me looking through his diary and now knowing his embarrassing taste in music. I was saved by someone I was unable to get a clear look at. Unfortunately, that person couldn't save me from the permanent scoliosis though. Back at the village, they decided it was time to reconstruct with the use of big booms, and finally arriving at the church, I had one last hurdle in my path. Bars. During my fights, I did my best to minimize the use of ammo, for my ammo is the make it or break it during this challenge, as well as using stealth kills when possible on takier enemies. Grabbing the fuel and filling the boat, and seeing that whatever is affecting the villagers are affecting the life forms in the lake as well, and was left with no choice but to neutralize the abomination from existence. Making my way through the dark cave and acquiring the first head, I also took the time to travel towards the boat and obtain the Red 9. Not much better than the starter pistol, but better nonetheless. Collecting the final head and acquiring the church key, I got into my first real boss fight, with the appearance of the overgrown infant. If you know, you know. My weapon of choice during the boss fight was the Red 9, due to its high damage output. It's not much, but still, it's honest work. After a while, a wolf monster heard the noise and came to my aid. However, it didn't do much. It just got its attention and managed to trick it into trapping itself under some debris. I went into this fight with a little over 100 rounds, not including the ammo I picked up in the cabins during the fight, and walked out with nothing left except the excessive amount of healing, as well as resources with gunpowder I refused to use. Finally, using the key to allow access to the church and investigating the church further, I finally had made contact with the target, Leon S. Kennedy. Files showed he was one of the few survivors of Raccoon City, just like myself, and my client needs him alive at all costs for reasons I didn't care about. All that mattered to me is the mission. I tell him that I was sent here to get him out safely, and I would prefer his cooperation. Due to the front door no longer looking like a suitable exit, we decided to use the open window upstairs. I stealthed my way through the village to save as much ammo as possible, and later was caught off guard when this brute defied the rules of my safe space and began aggressively breathing down my neck.
I can smell you.
We soon found ourselves surrounded. However, Ghost unlocked his front door and waited us inside. Unfortunately for him, I still had many questions unanswered. I asked him yet again, what is he doing here? And just like before, my interrogation was cut short, so it was time to set our differences aside for now and hold them off till we found an escape. Fending off an overwhelming mob of elderly people isn't very easy, especially when your only choice of defense are weapons that deal damage equivalent to my happiness of waking up in the morning. My first attempt was looking pretty solid, until it wasn't, but like a counselor once said, once you hit rock bottom, you can only go up. So that was a fucking lie, mostly because I'm unable to think of an efficient way to deal with the brute, and in case you're wondering, every time I died, I made sure to quit the game, because doing so resets the time to what it previously was on your last save. Eventually, I did manage to fend off the mob long enough for Leon to find an escape route and finally separate those with dementia from those with autism. Now that things were finally settled down, I asked once more why he is here. He said he and his partner was sent here to find and retrieve a sample of Las Plagas, but eventually got separated from his partner and ended up being taken prisoner. So it had appeared I wasn't the only one sent on this mission, and it's safe to assume that they are all working for the same client as I am. He then asked for my aid, and since it was already part of my mission, I agreed to aid him. And with that, we agreed to separate and cover more ground. He instructed I go investigate the fort and barn near the castle, while he went and investigated inside the castle, and join him there if it turns out empty. At the entrance of the Stronghold, I didn't have nearly enough ammo to fight my way through, so I just ran through them, and surprisingly, they left Leon alone. Investigating a cabin in the Stronghold, I was ambushed by the Chainsaw Sisters. During the chaos, I utilized everything I could, from Molotovs thrown by the enemies to the 2 lanterns, to weaken them enough to take them and the remaining forces down. Moving forward to check out the barn, our footsteps behind, and managing to land a hit with my knife that you could argue is just dust at this point. So, with no choice but to fall back, I managed to stop our pursuers by taking down the bridge that apparently was being held by hopes and prayers. Entering the barn, I wasn't even able to begin looking around before I was ambushed once more by the village chief. Finally, having enough of this elderly on steroids, now was a good time as any to finally take him down. I made sure to hold high ground and tried my best to make every round count till he was demoted to crippled. From there, I stayed downstairs and started using resources to replenish ammo and keep the fight going, till eventually the village chief was finally taken down. We finally arrived at the castle, and I take out the ones walking across the gate for additional resources. I had to push through some heavy artillery and did an efficient job preserving ammo during this section. After blasting down the front gate, we were introduced by a literal short king known as Ramon. Me and Leon looked at one another to make sure we were seeing this shit correctly, and Ramon must not have taken kindly to it, given the fact that instead of rolling the red carpet, I had to make my own with the aggressor's blood. I had Leon unlock the gate, and then fell into a forbidden dungeon where some forbidden things happened. Dealing with the Garrador wasn't anything difficult. I just kept shooting the obvious weak point till he stopped spazzing. Next was the water room, aka Hell. Cause if pain and regret had a physical form, this would be it. I ran past most of the enemies till I acquired the halo, and then run back to the Grand Hall entrance, cause doing so de-aggroes the enemies and forces them to run back to their starting point. And while I do that, I take the opportunity to take a couple down, and eventually be able to bring down the stairs, and once you make it up those stairs, you only need to deal with the 2 archers. Surprisingly, defending Leon while he rose the platforms went pretty well. Arriving at the courtyard, Leon took the opportunity to fight back and escape. However, I had to immediately halt my pursuit once he threatened to take extreme measures if I came any closer. What didn't help was the gate coming down, guaranteeing his escape. I gathered some fish at the fountain for additional healing supplies, and venturing further, I found out what the cultist does in their free time. Well, that was weird. Searching nearby rooms for Leon, I was ambushed by another former USS member. She claimed it was an honor to meet the Grim Reaper in person. She tried questioning me, however, getting too close, I was easily able to catch her off guard and turn the tables. But before I could flatline her, she was willing to give the whereabouts of Leon. How she knew I was looking for him, I didn't know. She was also willing to give the stone slate to open the secret door that she claimed was a shortcut to finding him, in exchange of letting her live. I run past the enemies going to the drawbridge, then actually woke up an overgrown homeless man that began throwing a fit. So in retaliation, I shot an iron ball to tuck him in. I finally run into Leon and I tell him the next time he pulls me like that, he'll regret it. Inside the bush maze, I travel through slowly and carefully because the dogs can easily take me down if they come by surprise. Finally lowering the flag to progress past the maze, I grabbed the snakehead with no problems. Then obtaining the lion head I had to deal with several knights. Luckily I was more than ready to go medieval on their asses. I used a little more ammo than I was comfortable with, but the lower I am on ammo, the higher my chances are of getting more from dropped loot, which I definitely abused throughout this challenge. The last head to retrieve was the goat head and I was surprised how well this went. I did to use some resources for ammo as well as use a knife on those who grabbed Leon for free insta-kills. The only enemies that proved to be a real nuisance was the one with the shields, but using the vault animation against them I was able to shoot them while exposed. Finally using all the heads to unlock the door, I found myself in a trap separated from Leon and I would prevent him from being taken once more while dealing with problems of my own. Fortunately for me, a little birdie was able to spot where they were taking him. Pushing through the castle, I put myself to pest exterminator. I took my time through the infested ballroom because ammo is easy to maintain, but healing items, however, are not. But eventually taking down all the pests and raising the gate, next I had to deal with the two Garradors. And to save as much ammo as possible, I took advantage of the disabled and allowed friendly fire. With the Garradors doing an efficient job of thinning the numbers, it allowed me to gain more on ammo from the dropped loot. And once they finished the small fries, I dealt with the Garradors little by little, and used nearly every last bullet I had collected during this fight. I managed to take them down, to then only get ambushed from above once I reached Leon and thrown down the well, not knowing it'll take more than that to take me down. Running through the pests in the well, I then needed to survive the onslaught for Vertigo, which was easy by simply playing Ring Around the Rosie with a giant power box, until eventually the elevator finally arrived. Reaching my floor, I was met by Ghost waving the Las Plagas sample and thanking me for causing such a ruckus, making it easy for him to acquire it. I fill him in on Leo's capture and he agrees to aid me in rescuing Leon. As we push through the mining tunnels, we use a dynamite to remove the rubble and will stop by two oversized obstacles. Dealing with the first, I expose his Plagas, throw him in a pool without knowing he couldn't swim, and using the panel to keep my distance from the armored giant, Ghost managed to place a stack of dynamite on the back of the other, and with a clean shot I knock him down and learn that he too couldn't swim. Really makes you question the point of that pool. Ghost suggested we use the minecart to travel through the tunnels faster, however that quickly turned to regret, and with the brakes being less than adequate, it didn't help our situation, but managed to survive in the end. We found ourselves fighting through some more bugs to reach the elevator that finally led us back to the surface. Before we could discuss our next move, Ghost took 8 inches to the back and we were charged to Nikolai, claiming he came to retrieve some stolen goods. He then began attacking me and had no choice but to hold my ground. Blocking and countering Nikolai's attacks, I managed to hold him off till eventually he falls back and claims he would spar longer, but he's needed elsewhere. Making my way to the clock tower, I was stopped by Ramon, who complimented me for my persistence, but claimed this was as far as I go before telling his men to make sure I don't make it to the top of the clock tower. Pushing up the clock tower anyways, I dealt with traps as well as using the traps against them. Starting the lift, I used a spike ball to deal with the first red zealot. I'd be very locked in there in this section because if I didn't play my cards right, I'd find my life getting stopped for too long, allow myself to very quickly get overrun. But prioritizing those that make it on the lift as well as using explosive barrels to their max efficiency, I could eventually find myself reaching the top of the clock tower on my second attempt. I managed to arrive just in time to see Nikolai carry off with Leon, and tried to listen to Ramon's rant. I decided to end his speech a little short, which only seemed to enrage him. During this boss fight, I was very worried I wouldn't have the ammo needed for this fight, but I was incredibly lucky to find out that ammo and herbs are dropped throughout this fight by explosive traps he places during. After having very close calls that I'm comfortable with, and against all odds, I managed to deal enough damage to Ramon to take him down and continue my pursuit on Nikolai to rescue Leon. While looking for the keys for the boat, I was met by a familiar figure waving a set of keys. Reaching the distant island, she told me not to get myself killed before she went her separate ways. I used my pistol to deal with the archer and spotlight to the front gate, and after successfully taking down the enemies guarding the front door, I'm able to proceed without setting the alarm and saving ammo. Reaching inside the prison and unlocking the security door, I found Leon locked up in one of the prison cells. With lack of ammo, I had no choice but to run past the enemies. I acquired the level 1 keycard and met up with a creep checking me out through the door window. In the freezer, I spent a little time with the power terminal, and while on that topic, I refuse to believe I'm the only one that still doesn't understand how this motherfucker works. I just pressed some random bullshit and eventually it worked. I acquired the LE5 because it'll come in handy very soon. Bypassing the generator in the freezer is quite simple. because for reasons unknown, enemies in Resident Evil hate anyone being behind them. So constantly getting behind him, I can just have him repeat the same move, kind of like me playing Mortal Kombat, till the keycard was finally finished. Quietly take care of the guards patrolling the incubation lab, I grabbed the biosensor and attached it to the LE5 to see which regenerator needed to die. I resorted to using the knife because, believe it or not, it's one of the most effective weapons against them, other than the biosensor of course. I used the wrench to access the upgrade terminal, and after inserting the keycard, I immediately haul ass out of that room till the process was done to run back in, grab the keycard, and access Leon's cell, and could finally untie Leon and find a way out of here. It wasn't long after saving Leon that he immediately became a burden, because if I had a dime for every time Leon took an axe that meant for me, I'd have 2 of them, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, back to back. And to make things worse, I didn't save since the last chapter, causing me a minor nervous breakdown with a side of migraine. So having our assholes spread once more, and return to where we once were, I used all the ammo I worked so hard to save up on against the Iron Maiden. Then later, removed the threats trying to reach Leon and dodged Regenerator trying to spray my cheeks once again. With the thick layer of concrete wall, and I mean thick with 3 C's, Leon operated a conveniently placed wrecking ball crane. For those that don't know, the weak point on the wall actually has a health bar, and using grenades, or in this case, bullets, I could help Leon break the wall with one swing, saving a lot more ammo in the long run. Making our way up the lift, we ran into someone introducing themselves as Sadler, but at this point I couldn't be bothered with introductions anymore. I was then unexpectedly struck from behind by Leon, then it was revealed to me that I had rescued a Leon clone this whole time, and those regenerators were all the failed previous attempts to clone him. He then walks away and promised that his hired mercenary will deal with me momentarily. Going after Sadler, I was very quickly stopped by Nikolai once again. He reminisced back to when we used to spar with one another, as well as added that I'm still a man of very few words. He claimed if I wished to go any further, I had to get through him first, but unlike all those years ago, he won't be going down that easily. Beating his first and second stage was child's play at best, but it was here he decided to activate his trump card. He explained that during the Raccoon City outbreak, the only way he could have survived was by injecting himself with the G-Virus, and he shall use its power to finally be the one to take down the one and only Grim Reaper. Facing Nikolai again and assuring this will be the last, I did an ungodly amount of physical trauma to his knees, as well as dodging his attacks and doing my best to keep my distance. After sacrificing enough rounds, Nikolai finally had had enough. Plunging the knife into his chest, he said it was an honor fighting you once more, Mr. Death, before taking his final breath. I then acquired his knife and made sure to make this knife last, for it would be very important later on. Pushing further, I received aid from the evac chopper. I relied on my knife while the evac chopper cleared the area to save ammo. I used a turret to deal with the AA gun. I know you can use your pistol at a certain spot to shoot the operator, but I'm not going to waste the ammo doing that. If you don't like it, well, fuck you, I make the rules. Once the chopper blast opened the gates, I run through the chaos to pull the 2 levers that opened the final gate and got away with a comfortable amount of ammunition. The evac chopper announced that the island has been rigged to explode and time was running out. I told him my mission isn't yet completed. Then he told me I had T-minus 30 minutes till detonation and a rendezvous at the loading dock. I pushed the remaining defense to reach the sanctuary and find the real Leon there, critically injured. Grabbing Leon, I was ambushed and surrounded by Sadler and his ghost ladies, but I was saved by an unknown USS member and allowed the opening to escape with unconscious Leon. I bring him to the auto dock to treat his wounds and inform him that I was here to get him out of here and his cooperation would be preferred. Reaching the loading dock with a comfortable amount of ammo and healing supplies, I told Leon to lay low while I called for extraction. After calling for extraction, I was swarmed by visitors, followed by Sadler. Before things got out of hand, backup had arrived just in time to turn the tables. Sadler didn't take this very well and charged at us, causing us to split up yet again. Battling Sadler wasn't very difficult, just incredibly long as always. It takes a handful of rounds to knock down Sadler, and when I do, I make sure to deal max damage output. I also made sure to make good use of the fighting knife I had saved for this very moment as well. My strategy dealing with Sadler was to go back and forth between the ladder and this bridge area and taking advantage of his slow jumping animation to shoot his weak points, so Sadler was finally taken down, or so I had thought. With time running out, it was now or never to finally take down Sadler, because until Sadler was taken care of, LZ was far too hot for extraction. So going to my final stand against Sadler and dodging all his incoming attacks till I finally passed the rocket launcher to expose Sadler and finish him off close and personal. In the midst of all the chaos, Sadler aggressively spanked my ass cheeks, and in form of payment for such services, the Lost Blaga sample. Before I could grab it myself, the unknown USS member grabbed it first. Just before I could ask what she was doing, she told me not to worry, that her and Ghost were both tasked with this mission, and finally revealing she was the partner of Ghost this whole time. Now with the LZ cleared, extraction could touch down, and we all escaped the island before detonation, finally beating Resident Evil 4 with S+ ranking as the Silent Minimalist. That'll do it for this challenge video. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike. If you guys have any ideas for a challenge in the future, leave them in the comments, and I hope to see you all in the next video.